Hello, and welcome to day 9 of the 12 Days of Chocolatey. I'm your host and solutions engineer, Adil Lagari, and at Chocolatey, we are the Windows automation experts. So just a little bit of a heads up for everybody joining us for the first time today. The 12 Days of Chocolatey so far has been a 12-day event put on by the Chocolatey team where for an hour every day, we're giving you a little bit of Chocolatey content there. And that's some webinars, discussions, Q&A, talks, and also the ability to win some prizes if you fill out a survey. So thanks for joining us here today, and thanks for joining us for all the days that you've been here so far. We appreciate the support. So feel free to go check out our platforms on Twitch and YouTube for any of the older days on video on demand if you'd like. And feel free to join us for the next couple of days. We'll be starting again on Monday. So today we're going to be talking about the many ways that you can integrate you and your organization's existing tooling with Chocolatey. And for today, we're going to have a bit of a different format with an open discussion and Q&A with the rest of the team. Perfect. So speaking of Q&A, we have a URL here that we specifically designed for those questions. This page you can go to and submit your questions there, and then we'll be sure to answer them on the stream. In addition, you can just visit that site, and if you like some of the questions there, you can upvote them so you make sure that they get answered on the stream as well. Sound good? So yeah, sounds good. Awesome. Going into the agenda here, just to cover what we're going to talk about today. So Mukesh is going to talk us through the integrations and partnerships that we have with Chocolatey, the many partners that we do have. We're going to launch into a discussion where we're going to talk about spotlighting a few of those partners and the integrations that we have with Puppet, first of all, and touching on SCCM and Intune as well, and then talking about extensibility with PowerShell for Chocolatey in general. Then we're going to touch on leveraging repositories, NuGet v2 repositories, and the many platforms you can use there. And we'll also talk about API integration with Chocolatey Central Management. That'll be followed by a Q&A and a summary at the end. And we'll give you some links to explore further. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our co-founder and COO, Mukesh Sharma. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Adil. Appreciate the introduction and great job on the hosting. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're connecting in from. Really excited to spend the next 35, 40 minutes with everyone here and talk about something that is pretty close to our heart, and I guess also something that you're keen to kind of learn about is integrations. So at Chocolatey, I spend a lot of my time speaking to customers and partners, and one of the things that comes up very often is integration, interoperability. I spent most of my career in the tech industry. I've had various operational leadership roles at companies like EMC, VMware, and Puppet. And one common theme has been, how do you reuse our solution with what you're doing, and what else does it work with? And at Chocolatey, that's pretty core to our approach and how we do things. And you may often hear, us say, hey, Chocolatey is infinitely customizable, flexible, and allows you to do a lot of things. But when speaking to organization, there's kind of 2 or 3 things that I tend to often hear as themes. Firstly, most organizations will have invested in some technology or some solution or set of tools. And you want to maximize the investment you get out of those. You can't just simply throw everything away and start again. Second thing is, you may have tools in place today that solve part of the problem, and there may be gaps or other solutions required to kind of complete everything to solve the issues for your use cases. And the last thing is, organizations don't want to be locked into proprietary technologies that only do one thing or don't integrate with other solutions. And especially in today's environment, right? Most organizations will have some kind of tech stack or a DevOps pipeline, and the days of one tool to rule them all is kind of fast fading. So when you look at kind of where Chocolatey fits into this, our kind of ethos has always been about being open, being flexible, and connecting and allowing you to connect with tools that are critical to your business, that are popular, but also what's emerging. It's not what you may have today, but where things are going. So to kind of set the scene for today, we've put this kind of image together, the circle of integration, if you want to call it that. And we'll kind of quickly spend a few minutes just talking through some of these areas. So kind of core to what we did and where we initially started was the integration we had with the configuration managers, right? Puppet we'll get to hear about a little bit more. Ansible, if any of you had a chance to join our webinar yesterday with Red Hat Ansible, we kind of spoke a little bit more about the integrations there. But in addition to that, Chef, SaltStack, and PowerShell DSC. So they've always been kind of the deeper, more mature integrations we've had. Then leading on from there in that kind of CI/CD pipeline, the DevOps pipeline, if you will, there's the kind of continuous integration tools, and then there's the source control tools as well, Git, Jenkins, TeamCity, etc. And then leading on from there, you've also got the repositories. So you'll often hear us saying that, it makes sense to have some kind of private repository solution. And again, working closely with JFrog Artifactory, Sonatype Nexus, and a bunch of the others. So these are kind of always been the integrations and kind of tools we've had in that workflow, if you want to call it that. What we've begun to see actually more recently, certainly over the last year or so, is where organizations have invested in tools such as SCCM, or looking at things such as Intune, or they may have PDQ deploy. And what organizations are saying, hey, well, look, these solutions do a good enough job to a certain extent, but I really need something to fill that gap or really enhance that to kind of help in terms of Windows software management and packaging at scale. And we'll touch upon that a little bit in going forward. And then the next piece of the puzzle is the possibilities with API. So a lot of our customers are now looking at the API that we provide and looking at how they can extend that into other environments, from data analytics, from dashboards, providing more information, and taking some of that rich metadata that exists in Chocolatey and kind of begin to publish it to other groups. So that's kind of a high-level overview of kind of some of the integrations. And of course, it doesn't stop here and not all the logos are captured. But what we'll do now is we'll kind of switch gears a little bit and then open up a discussion. So maybe at this point, if I can invite the rest of the team to kind of join the session, and we'll do a quick round of introductions before we get into more discussion and debate. So with that, let me quickly go around the team, and if everyone can quickly introduce themselves. So Rob, why don't we start with you?
All right, thank you, Mukesh. Hey, this is Rob. I created Chocolatey a long time ago, and it's grown into a nice, large ecosystem, and we've been able to bring on all these great folks to help us carry that vision for what we want for Chocolatey forward. Great,
thank you, Rob. Gary, quick intro from you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Gary Ewan Park. I am a senior software engineer here at Chocolatey. I've been using Chocolatey from a personal standpoint for a lot of years now, and it was good to get involved in the commercial side of things. So yeah, really enjoying working here.
Great, thank you, Gary. Joel.
Hey, I'm Joel Sallow. I've done a lot of work with PowerShell, and I joined the team to help with CCM development and a few other things.
Great, thank you, Joel. And Paul, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Paul Broadith. I'm a senior technical engineer here at Chocolatey Software. I've been in IT for about 30 years now, doing a myriad of different things.
Thank you, Paul. And last but by no means least, Stephen, over to you.
Thanks, Mukesh. Yeah, I'm Stephen, PowerShell enthusiast, mad scientist, as some people like to call me. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. Officially a senior solutions engineer here at Chocolatey, and really excited to have this discussion today.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, team. Thank you for participating. So, Rob, I want to bring it back to you, right? So, obviously, you and I go back a few years when we met at Puppet and kind of kicked off the commercial side of things. Now, Puppet is one of our integrations we've had for some time, and in fact, you're something close to your heart because you're involved in initially building that provider. So would you mind taking us through a little bit around that integration with Puppet and the whole configuration management story?
Sure. So as most of you probably know, Chocolatey was born and created back in 2011, so almost 10 years old. In 2013, in the summer, I joined Puppet to help make Windows more awesome, because that was, kind of on my personal mission statement is to really make Windows a great place to be. And then as we moved forward over all the way up to 2017, really helped advance that mission with Puppet. Then had the opportunity to step out and work full-time on Chocolatey and kind of help with the software management aspect even more, because that's an area that's been of dire need, especially with our Windows software ecosystem. But it's really great to see that Chocolatey has flourished as that package management and software management solution for Puppet, for Ansible, Chef, SaltStack, configuration management, and all of the different tools that are out there. It's really answered a need that folks need, and it's kind of grown much bigger than I thought it was. Would go when I first started it. With Puppet, what's really interesting is that's kind of a provider-based type format, and so you get to write about Chocolatey and things you want to manage for Chocolatey in that software in the language of Puppet. Actually, would it make sense if we just kind of looked at it?
Yeah, that'd be great if you've got something to show us, Rob. Thank you.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and it might come through a little interestingly. So there's a suggestion to change it, but I didn't have the opportunity, so it may not take up the entire bit of space, but that looks pretty big, so that's good. This particular script here is a Puppet manifest, and we're going to go through this, but I'm actually going to kick this off and run it. And so the way that I produced this is that I went to chocolatey.org. I went over to the install page. And on the install page, most people know, and they don't necessarily might miss this little tab here. So there's a really nice thing that you can do if you're going to get it from the community as a community user. If you're an organization, though, we've already pre-set up everything that you need for all of the different environments that you might be using, and a lot of them are probably going to fall under generic. And so over here, I have a Nexus repository, which is already set in here, so that's good. But I have a Nexus repository, and in there, I have a couple of packages. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I've already popped it in here, and so it's already replaced that, and so I can just copy this, and I believe this is copyable on. It's got a little copy button and other sections, but for some reason it's not showing me in IE here. And so then I would just pop this in. Now you'll notice I've already pre-done this here, and this looks a little different. What this is, and we're going to talk about this during the Q&A session. There's something called Script Builder that goes along with the community repository, really helping you get all of your packages and stuff kind of put together, so you just have a nice script that you can run, kind of pre-producing all of that. And it's been in the works since we reintroduced the new look of the website over a year ago. It was kind of set down for a little while, and we've picked it back up. We're going to see that coming in the new year, and that's all I'm going to say about that. You'll just have to join us at the session next Wednesday for the Q&A, and bring your questions there about Script Builder. All right, and so I'm going to kick this off because it's going to take a moment. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to go here. Get that link to run that. So I'm going to run a Puppet apply, and then I need to find this. Nope. Yep. And revision. All right, so I'm going to kick this off, and we're going to talk about this at the same time. So I'm going to kind of drag this over to the right a little so we can see it go at the same time. Keep that going there so we can just see it go. So it's already set the registry key for me. So what I've done is I've said, here's my repository URL. And this actually isn't working out quite as nicely as I thought it might. Back to full screen. And I've given it some configuration. Again, this is all, it's not PowerShell, it's written in the language of the provider. So that's what we call provider, platform provider formats. So on the back end behind it, it is using Chocolatey to kind of manage that stuff. But we get to talk about this in a much more declarative language. So we say, I want this to be like this, and it makes that happen, right? And so as we look, I'm removing the community repository, setting up my own internal repository to that Nexus repository. And I'm actually bringing Chocolatey and installing it from there. I'm not going out to the community. I'm also doing this preemptively. I'm setting a package for Chocolatey to keep it to the latest based on what's in my repository. Now, this doesn't mean anything, and it looks weird when you first think about it. But over time, as you're updating Chocolatey, what this is going to make sure is that Chocolatey does get upgraded for you as you're putting a new version out on all of your machines. I'm installing a package called Chocolatey License, which I followed the instructions over here to actually run a script really quickly. It created a package license for me, and I just pushed that right up into Nexus as well. And then once I put that in, I'm actually going to disable that license source. I do that so because I already have all of the license packages up on my Nexus repository, so I don't run it reaching out to the internet. I want it to stay internal to my organization, right? And of course, I want to get that license package installed as well. Last thing I'm going to be doing is setting tab completion. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that I can do here. I'm going to go ahead and install 7-zip. So as we watch this finish out, it will have applied that entire bit in about 90 seconds. So got Chocolatey installed and then set all of our configuration for us, went ahead and set that tab completion, and then it went ahead and installed that 7-zip. Now, to go get 7-zip, that's kind of interesting. As we come down here into 7-zip install in the community packages section, now there's a link here. Again, organization, right? So I just click that. I can drop my repository URL here, and then I just come down here and I select Puppet, right? And it gives me that, and I can just pull this right out and pop that into my script. And I've basically done that, as you can see over here. Now it's telling me I have this in the wrong order, so we can go back and fix that so that we push ensure to the top because the linting here is telling me I'm doing it wrong. Thank you, Puppet folks, for that nice linting tool that you have inside of Visual Studio Code. It's a great extension. Now, what you didn't see me do as part of this is I actually went and I grabbed the package. And so there are 2 different ways I can get that package to bring it to my internal repository so I can use it. One is I can just download the package and push it, and that caches it. And that is literally no different than the way I would get it on the community repository. However, it typically is going to require internet because a lot of these packages here have what we call redistribution rights. All of them are subject to it on a public repository, so they can't actually contain the binaries unless it's explicitly allowed, right? And so the other option I have is to internalize, and I can do that open source as well. So there's a manual internalization instructions with that. However, again, this is it's tedious, right? And so that's why we have the package internalizer feature, which we can run a command and we can actually automate it. And there's a link to how to automate that package internalizer as well, so that we don't have to do all of that work. When there's a new version, say 7-zip, it's automatically internalized and brought into maybe a test repository for us to then look at. And during the different days of this, of the day 12 days, we've talked about some of this. And one of those things that we talked about was Chocolatey for the organizations. And that was, I think, day 4. And Gary went through a great kind of contextual overview of that. And there are more videos on YouTube that really dig in on all of that. Highly recommend that. So coming back to this, we were able to use Puppet, use that language to get all of this installed. And so now if I take a look, bring up a new window here, run as administrator, some Choco. So we have Chocolatey installed, we have the business edition. If we take a look at what we have installed locally, we have, of course, 7-zip, we got that installed, and we got all these other things installed. And we were able to do that very, very quickly. It could be imagination is, there's a lot more things that we can do. So that's kind of Puppet.
Right.
So I'm going to hand back over to Vikash now.
Great. Thank you, Rob. That was excellent. And that's really powerful stuff, right? So if you're an existing Puppet customer, you've got those integrations in place. And if you're looking at a new configuration manager, certainly helps. And I guess the other thing I just want to touch upon is that our partnership with Puppet is much more than engineering. We also have a go-to-market relationship, so Puppet can also resell Chocolatey as well. So thank you, Rob. We'll come back to you later on. So I want to change gears a little bit now. So moving away from kind of the DevOps tools and configuration management, and talk about some of the Microsoft tool set, and in particular SCCM and Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So with that, Adil, maybe I can bring you into the conversation here.
Absolutely. Hi.
All right, so Adil, you spend a lot of time speaking to prospective customers, clients, partners, and I'm sure you hear the question around SCCM and Intune. Can Chocolatey work with SCCM? How do they work together, and so forth? So firstly, what are you hearing, and what is the kind of the high-level response to some of those questions?
It's a great question, Mukesh. Yeah, we probably hear it a couple of times a day, huh? The SCCM Intune question. With SCCM and Intune now, Microsoft's strategy is to put it under one umbrella application called Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So MEM has MEM Configuration Manager and MEM Intune. So those two pieces, it's very much the same sort of basic format or the same basic theory behind building those packages on either one. In SCCM, you sort of have naive program packages, and then you have the more robust and sort of preferred SCCM application packages. And those are very analogous to Intune Win32 packages on Intune. So essentially the process is very similar. What you're going to buy yourself the most with Chocolatey packages is the ability to actually have an underlying Chocolatey NuGet package to make your SCCM application packaging a little simpler in that process. So not having as many fields to fill in the different menus in order to do that.
Okay. So really simplification and speed. Now, that sounds great. Sounds good in theory, but as you know, people like to see things in real life. So you can show us today.
Absolutely. Let's switch over to SCCM and show you a bit of a preview here. So I'm over here on my SCCM primary site server, and I have the configuration manager console here. So I'm just going to open that up. If I click on it, responding as quick as SCCM normally does. So we hop in here to the software library, and I'm going to show off two different types of application packages just to drive this point home. So we have a generic SCCM application package. In this case, it's 1Password. And so I'll show you some of the fields that are different. I'm going to go into deployment types here, and we'll take a look at the 1Password script type of package here. So firstly, of course, you're defining your content. So you're actually having to define where that binary is kept locally so that it can be distributed with your distribution points. So this is a difference with the generic packaging that you're doing. That's not the same on the Chocolatey end. And Chocolatey, we're managing from NuGet repositories. So you don't necessarily need to define this and that. And I'll show you that in a sec. The programs tab as well. Over here is where I would define my binary, my executable, of course. And then I'd go and figure out what all those silent arguments are. And I'm having to do that for every individual package. It's nice and easy for an MSI. You're right-clicking and generating these packages. But anything other than MSI, my packaging suddenly becomes non-standard. So I have a lot of stuff to figure out in terms of silent arguments, et cetera, which I don't have to do on the Chocolatey end. In addition to that, that's the install step. I've actually populated that I've cheated. I've used the Chocolatey install for that piece of it. So these arguments you see, I wouldn't know these offhand. I'd have to figure those out. But I cheated and used our package builder solution for that specifically, which is a Chocolatey for Business feature. The uninstall side now. The uninstall side, I would also not only need to determine all the uninstall silent arguments, but on top of that, I would also have to determine where the binary is kept. So where it's been installed, that fully qualified path. So whether that's in program data, program files x86, I'd have to define that explicitly here in the package for a generic SCCM application package. In addition, third difference is the dependencies. So dependencies, how they work in SCCM generic packages is if I have a dependent package, then I actually need to go ahead and create that dependent package ahead of time as an SCCM application package and then tag it here in this menu as a dependency in order for this to function properly. So let's take a look at how this becomes simpler with Chocolatey NuGet under the hood. So a Chocolatey NuGet package. Now I'm going to open up the same 1Password package, but this is the NuGet package version. So first of all, we'll hop into deployment types. This looks much the same so far. Now here are the differences. So firstly, in content, I'm not defining this because Chocolatey's already managing it. In my Chocolatey ecosystem, I've already defined a NuGet repository. So it's nice and simple. I don't even need to define a content location because I'll let Chocolatey figure it out. Now, over here, you can see this is a little bit simpler on the install and uninstall step. I simply have Choco install 1Password -y, and the -y is simply just accepting all prompts, so it's non-interactive. And the uninstall is just as simple: Choco uninstall 1password-y. So I don't need to figure out the paths for the uninstall. I don't need to figure out where my binaries are kept. I don't need to figure out what sources I'm using, anything like that. I'm letting Chocolatey handle this on the client end using the Chocolatey client. So it's nice and simple. This format as standard. You can even use this for multiple versions without having to change much there if you wanted to. Third big difference, of course, is those dependencies. So now, of course, I don't have a dependency defined in either of these, but if I did something like a Java runtime environment, a JRE, or a .NET Framework package, then I wouldn't have to define it here either, because Chocolatey natively has the way to understand dependencies built into its new spec. As long as it's specified in your new spec file, it's going to, Chocolatey's going to go ahead and inspect that new spec file, see that dependent package, go ahead and install it and fulfill that dependency before it installs your target package. So again, no need to define that either. So those are the big differences I find between SCCM generic application packages and then ones backed by Chocolatey NuGet packages under the hood. And that makes a big difference there in simplicity. And I'll just show you, just the proof is in the pudding over here. Here's my 1Password Chocolatey package now that's showing up nice and native right in my software center. And I can click on this and I can go ahead and install it. And this shouldn't take long at all. It's going to go ahead and install that package. And this is underlying command now, the Choco install. So you know that it's working. I just want to show that off, that it works. And once that's done, I'll just show you that it comes up, and also that you now get the uninstall button, which you didn't in the other version because I didn't define it properly. And there you go. It's up there, the uninstall button. I'll just show you that this is installed really quick here. And yep, there you go. I have the run command, so it is able to install it, and it's functioning completely for the end user. And I can also use the uninstall as a function to uninstall it. So all working and backed by Chocolatey NuGet packages to make it simpler.
Excellent. Well, thank you. That's pretty powerful stuff. So if in summary, what you're saying is customers can continue to use SCCM, but then really look to leverage the power of Chocolatey to simplify the creation of packaging, using our community repository, and hide some of that complexity there, right? But you're essentially saving time for Windows sysadmins, right? Yes, exactly. And we're hoping to save you more in future too. Okay, I'm going to come back to you on that piece because I know you've got some exciting updates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've covered Puppet, we've covered SCCM. I want to bring Stephen into the conversation now a little bit, actually. So Stephen, I know you have a lot of various roles. You've done a lot of things. You've probably seen every single technology out there that sits on Windows, right? But I also hear you like a bit of PowerShell, right? So some of the questions we often get from customers, hey, look, we know Chocolatey works with PowerShell, but what is the extensibility with PowerShell and Chocolatey? And what are you seeing? What are some of the use cases where you think we could help our customers and community members?
Yeah. So really, when you take a step back and think about it, choco.exe is just a binary that lives on the system, and you can natively interact with those binaries via PowerShell. So really, the sky is the limit in terms of what you can do with Chocolatey and what you can build with Chocolatey. So, for example, if you've got a help desk ticketing system or something like that that can do automated actions when certain ticket types come in or certain requests come in, say you've got an application that you need to apply a fix for, and you do that for every single ticket that comes in of that particular type. Create a Chocolatey package that has some PowerShell code in it that applies that fix, and create a custom action inside of your ticketing system that would apply that Chocolatey package to the system as soon as the ticket comes in. That action would run, and then it would update the ticket to notify the requester that, hey, this fix has been applied. You're good to go, and automatically solve off the ticket. Or you could bolt Chocolatey to your development pipelines for your developers so that when they're developing your in-house applications and generating those MSIs, it's automatically generating Chocolatey packages for you and pushing it to the right repositories so that your end users can consume those upgrades to those in-house applications. So if you can think about it in PowerShell and dream it up, I almost guarantee you that it's possible. The sky is absolutely the limit. And that's my favorite part about Chocolatey, is that it's so fun to just let your imagination run wild and see what kind of cool stuff you can come up with.
So if you can kind of imagine it, you can do it.
Exactly.
That's excellent. That sounds very powerful, especially in today's day and age, right, where you've got multiple use cases. You've got organizations moving from on-prem to the cloud or containers and other scenarios. That's excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen, I want to bring in another conversation piece here, really, is repositories. And you know, we talk a lot about repositories in our customer demos and kind of best practices guides, but just talk us through, you know, why repositories are important, and are there any particular that we work with or don't work with?
Yeah, so a repository server is extremely helpful. Not only do you get a central place where you can control who has access, you can have multiple different feeds if you've got different business units that have different packaging requirements. You can separate those packages out into the separate feeds and provide sources to the separate business units so that people don't have access to the software that they're not supposed to have. And you can back that up with like RBAC controls and things like that. So it's really extensible there. And there are a lot of different platforms that you can use to do that work on. Sonatype Nexus is a great open source repository server. All of these are, by the way, they require NuGet v2 to work. So Sonatype Nexus has NuGet v2 support. JFrog Artifactory has really great NuGet support. Anito ProGet has great support. And you can even use something like an Azure DevOps artifacts feed as well. So if you're already doing Azure Pipelines work as part of your development process, if you've got those in-house applications, you can absolutely just stand up a Azure Artifacts feed backed by NuGet v2 and configure that as your source for your clients so that your development team can just natively push their development releases directly from their pipeline into their release pipeline, and then have that release pipeline drop the artifact into the Azure Pipelines artifact feed, and then you can keep going. And then you have that great version control and things like that as well. You can have multiple versions of a package sitting on a repository server. So if something goes wrong, you can really quickly with Choco install whatever version of that particular package and say allow downgrade, and we'll take the current version off and put the previous version on. So you won't really get that fine-grained control using something like a file share or an SCCM distribution point or something like that. So repositories are a really powerful tool, not necessarily essential, but highly, highly, highly recommended.
Fantastic, excellent. Thank you. So again, no limitations in terms of what you can do out there. And again, tying that into your workflow really gives you the power to kind of automate your Windows lifecycle. Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Great. And we'll come back to you later on. So I wanted to bring Gary into the next part of the conversation when we talk about APIs. So Gary, you work on a lot of things. You work on a lot of cool stuff, a lot of critical stuff across our platform. And one thing, we've been hearing a lot is about the API, right? Often we hear from our customers, hey, API sounds great, but can you tell us again, what is the API that we provide, and are there any use cases out there where you could see that potentially being used?
Absolutely. So, I mean, there's really two sides to the concept of the API. So where it started, though, was Chocolatey gives you very, very fine-grained information at the computer level about what's installed, who installed it, what packages are outdated. So on a per machine basis, all of that information is available. But really the fundamental premise of the initial version of CCM was to collate all of that data and put it into a central location. And that's really where Chocolatey Central Management came from. It gives you that single pane of glass view across your entire infrastructure about everything that's installed and on your machine. Now, what then came about was, well, we want to expose that data to other people. So if you are using something like Power BI and you want to provide dashboards or KPI metrics about how many packages are uninstalled, where they're installed, etc., you can absolutely do that by tapping into the API that is now exposed within Chocolatey Central Management. And you can send that data to wherever you need it. Now, on the flip side of that is that now that we've got all of our Chocolatey endpoints checking into CCM, and with the new deployment functionality that we have, you can actually take advantage of triggering those deployments from an external source. So Stevie kind of touched on it with the ability to, if you've got a help desk ticket, to automatically run Chocolatey, but you could also have some external trigger create and manage a deployment through CCM. So whether that's a scheduled something that you want to set up, whether that's there's a security vulnerability has been identified with a particular application that you've got installed across all of your environment, you can absolutely use the API to facilitate that deployment. So there's really, that's the two sides of it. It's taking all of the data that Chocolatey has provided and giving it to other external systems to do something with. And the other one is, well, we've got all of these external systems, but we want to be able to do something, and that something can be done with Chocolatey. So kind of Stevie said it best. It's whatever you can imagine, you can absolutely do now using the API as the driving factor behind that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Gary. Yeah, so that's pretty powerful again, right? So what you're saying is if you want to provide that data and information to management or teams working in support or troubleshooting, they can access that through tools and dashboards they have. But on the flip side of that, get better control over deployments and endpoint management. So excellent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Superb. Well, thank you, Gary, for that, and thank you, team. So what I wanted to do now is to bring the rest of the team in, because I think, Rob, we've been getting some questions coming in, right? I think they've been coming in thick and fast. So, so I'd like to maybe hand over to you, Rob, and let's see what questions the team can handle today.
All right. So, hey, thank you, Mukesh. There are quite a few questions, and with QA, the nice thing there is the ability to vote. And so one of those questions is, what plans, if any, do you have to better integrate with Intune? That one's got the most votes. And so I think a few of us could probably throw an answer for that. I'll kind of seed it, and then I'm going to pass off to Mukesh, and then let other people kind of weigh in on this. But, you know, one of the things that we definitely want to do is, right now you can absolutely do some integration in the same way you can with SCCM. And of course, when you bring Chocolatey in the mix, it enhances and it makes Intune better. We definitely want to have that be a little bit more native versus the scripted way of it is now. And so that is something that we are going to be looking at in 2021. That's about as much as I want to say without giving away the pie. So I'm going to pass to Mukesh on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, and the first thing is customers are using Chocolatey and Intune, right? So it's not those you can't use it, and you know, it's not interoperable. But to Rob's point of view, what we want to do is make it more elegant for our customers, a little bit more seamless, right? And that's the work we're doing. So we've got some activity going on and working closely with some of our customers. And I think this is one that is on top of your list as well, right?
It's very near and dear to my heart. So we hear you loud and clear. We want to give you an easy way to onboard Chocolatey NuGet packages, not only into SCCM, but also into Intune. And so we're definitely hard at work on that as we speak. And stay tuned, because I can't say more because I'll get in trouble with Rob.
Absolutely, but it's definitely coming down the line.
Yes, sir. Hot and heavy.
Hot and heavy. So there was another question here. Sorry, the two questions that are getting pretty good results, and there's more coming in. One of those is, can I use SCCM distribution points instead of bringing in a Nexus repo? And the answer is absolutely. One of the nice things about Chocolate repositories is they do have the ability to have file shares, and you can put a file share on top of an SCCM distribution point and do that. And when you are pushing out, you'll just have to make sure that you have something that's on that system, maybe an environment variable or something that tells it what its source is, or you can actually set up a source that's pointing to that particular distribution point. I will tell you that it is not optimal. There are much better ways and much more efficient ways to handle things, and you will probably at some point end up migrating up to a repository just to get a much better experience. And with that, I'm going to hand that one over to, let's say, Stephen.
Yeah, so there are we'll call them caveats to using a file share over a full-fledged repository server. Controlling access is one thing. Anonymous access to a repository server is great if you're doing things all internal on your network and installing Chocolatey packages from there. And you also have the ability to have RBAC there the same way that you would permissions on a file share. But the way that Chocolatey interacts with the file share is a little bit different than you might expect. So the permission set of giving a specific group of users access to the file share and then you run Chocolatey and it doesn't work. That's because the permission set to make the machine that is running Chocolatey have permissions to the share is a little bit different and harder to control than using just a repository server. Because at that point, Chocolatey is just going to do an HTTP call or an HTTPS call if you've got your repository set up over SSL to download that package rather than pointing it at a file share. So you said it best when you said it's not optimal. It's definitely not to use a file share. You definitely want to look at a repository server sooner rather than later. And I have a feeling it will be sooner if you're going to go down the file share route.
So I did just want to mention something quickly in addition to that. So for our customers who are using Chocolatey for Business and SCCM, and you need that transition point, you're not ready to move over to the NuGet repository yet, and you really do want to use, continue to use a distribution point as your distribution method, you could always do a Choco source add for your SCCM cache location locally on the endpoints, assuming it's the same in each spot. And you just need to make sure your NuGet packages are in that spot. If you're okay to manage deprecation of those packages and other things like that, and you're not as worried about leveraging some of the advanced indexing and searchability features of a NuGet repository, then that can very much be like a stepping stone transition for you too.
Thank you, guys. So we have another question that says, do we have guidance for cloud-only deploys for Choco and Intune? So kind of carrying that Intune question a little further. Mukesh?
So I guess actually, Dill, it's probably better to pick this one up because I know you've had a few conversations on this. But one thing I did want to mention on Intune actually was quite interesting, was that I was speaking to a customer more recently, and what they found is that the simpler use cases of deploying simple applications and packages are pretty straightforward and can be done. But when you look at more complicated packages with dependencies, this is where they're reverting to kind of Chocolatey a little bit more, right? And this kind of ties into some of the points you mentioned, Adil. But do you want to kind of pick up that piece?
Sure, absolutely. So we hear you loud and clear, by the way, folks. Intune is deeper Intune integration is coming, we promise. One of the big pieces of Intune integration is people want to upload their packages up to company portal. They want to use company portal as their distribution point for that. What I would say is generally with that, you're defining your stuff the same way, but you just need to make sure your dependent packages are also Intune Win packages, Win32 API packages that are up on the up on your company portal. So as long as you're doing that, you can still use the user and device type of control at the Intune level to package those, to use those Chocolatey packages underneath. And then again, those are just those commands like Choco install or Choco uninstall for each location. And there are further enhancements coming, like the detection rules and other stuff like that in the future. But I can't speak to more yet. But stay tuned.
Fantastic. So Joel, this one's going to be thrown towards you. Now that we have Chocolatey CCM, so Fred's asking us, now that we have Chocolatey CCM integration with Ansible, Chef, and others on the way, how long until we see a Choco with PWSH, so PowerShell 7 on our Linux servers?
Hard to say exactly because there was a lot of work involved in getting Chocolatey to .NET Core and all that sort of thing. It is on our roadmap. We have talked about it quite a bit, and it is something we want to look at. It is not slated for a specific time yet, But we have had a lot of conversations around it, so rest assured we will get there. It's just a matter of when, really, and when we are able to actually dedicate the necessary time to make everything work, because moving from .NET Framework to .NET Core is a huge undertaking. If anyone's been around for PowerShell's journey, the initial versions of PowerShell, like version 6, was very bare bones, very stripped down, and we want to try and avoid having to pull too many things out to make things work. We want to actually still have a complete experience for Chocolatey. So we don't know yet, but it is in the works, yes.
Yeah, and so we'll probably talk a little bit more of that on day 12 at the Q&A roadmap. So that's something that we'll bring up in that session. So stay tuned, come back for that, Fred. You might hear a little bit more about our plans there. All right, so Paul, lost the question. Let me see if I can find it again. Ah, here it is. Is it possible to install Chocolatey packages on a target host without installing Chocolatey and still use the Choco PowerShell helpers, shims, etc.?
Yes, it is. You can install them on PowerShell. Sorry, without Chocolatey at all.
Yeah, without Chocolatey at all.
Oh, well, you need Chocolatey in order to use the PowerShell helpers underneath, because the Chocolatey's got that framework there for those PowerShell helpers. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. You've got to do that.
What is the difference between a provider and a naive integration? Does anybody want that one? Gary?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. I mean, Rob kind of touched on that when he spoke about the Puppet integration. So when we talk about a provider integration, you're bringing Chocolatey into the DSL that's used by that system. So whether it's the way that Puppet writes its manifest files, whether it's the way that Chef writes the cookbooks, whether it's the way that insert provider here does the way it does it, you're writing it in the exact same way that you would use one of the other integrations that system works with. When you're talking about a naive integration, that's more along the lines of what Stevie was talking to. It's under the hood, Chocolatey is just an exe. In Ruby, in PowerShell, in whatever language you wanted to use, you absolutely can. It's just that it's more bespoke, and it's you're making it the way that you need it to be. But if you're doing it in Puppet or you're doing it in Ansible, you would write it the exact same way as though you were integrating with whatever else you're automating. So that's really the distinction between the two there.
I will just add that idempotence is a big part of that too. So if you want to be able to run installs again and again without anything changing, that's what you buy yourself with a true configuration manager.
Agreed. So again, from a naive implementation point of view, you absolutely can still do that. You're just doing a lot of extra additional work that the other higher level system has already taken care of for you. So the idempotency definitely comes along for the ride with the Ansibles, the Chefs, the Puppets. You absolutely could do it yourself. Whether you would want to do it yourself, that's a different question. I personally wouldn't, but that's kind of where I sit. I stand on the shoulders of giants and use what's already there, but take advantage of what Chocolatey brings to the table as well.
Awesome. So Ryan Moon asked us a question the other day about it'd be great if the Chef cookbook for installing Chocolatey could be adapted to support organizational deployments. Is that a possibility down the road? And I was really hoping that he was going to be on here so we could kind of fill that out a little bit more, because it already supports the ability to do that. If you head back over to that chocolatey.org/install and you click on organizations and then Chef, you'll see how you can actually do it with an internal organization deployment. If that's not working, of course, that is an issue for that Chef cookbook that can be looked at, but it should be working.
There was a community-driven contribution. I forget who the company was, but there was a complete Chef cookbook that showed you how to set up organizational use of Chocolatey. So yes, we have the documentation, but I think there are also examples out there of doing a full-blown installation using a standard cookbook. So there are some examples out there. I forget the name of the lassie that did it, but she did a talk with us at ChefConf in the US, but I forget her name. I apologize for that, but there is at least one example of doing that out there.
Right. Some of these questions are really good for the Q&A wrap session, so I'm going to try to look at the ones that are more towards, we got about time for one more. one's more towards the conversation that we're having right now. And so one of those is, what benefits does Chocolatey provide above infrastructure management tools? I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but I'm going to pass to anybody that wants to do that. Anybody want that?
I think you just volunteered, Rob. No, I meant you.
Okay, so I volunteered myself. We talked on the first couple of days about what Chocolatey brings to the table above everything else. One of those things is that it can manage all software. If you look at almost all of the other tools that are out there, they're managing to what's in programs and features. And so legit just the things that have installers, which represents about 50 to 80% of the software you might be putting on a box. And guess what? Security findings, CVEs, all of that, they don't stop at programs and features. So why would you? And so that's one of the big benefits. There is a whole page on chocolatey.org. I think docs.chocolatey.org/why maybe or something. In there, we talk about all of the benefits that Chocolatey provides above and beyond those things. And one of the other ones is testing. So if you say that you're using SCCM, how do you test your deployments? Typically with a canary deployment to production. That's not necessarily the correct way. You should be feeling very confident about that way ahead of time. And so Chocolatey provides you the ability to do that. And above and beyond everything else, it is made for automation. So it starts with that. And so it is going to give you the ability to move much, much faster. And as you saw, like say with SCCM, when we showed that particular example, if you use a Chocolatey package wrapping that, you get install and uninstall and all of that stuff for free. And you have the ability to have tested that before you went and created that application package inside of SCCM. So you get a lot of benefits there. You get the benefits of being able to manage all of your software as well. And dependency management is another big one that is in package manager. So there's a ton of stuff there. So thanks for that question. Great questions. Unfortunately, we are not able to get to all of them. I will keep these open and we'll probably revisit them when we get to the Q&A session next week. So with that, let's go ahead and end the Q&A bit. Over to you, Adil.
Sounds good. I'll just hop over and make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. And here we go. Okay, please let anybody let me know if I'm sharing the wrong screen. I'm sure somebody will shout at me in a second. Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone for all your contributions and all your information in the discussion. Very, very, very useful and very interesting. So further to that, I'm just going to summarize some of this stuff for everybody's benefit. So we talked about provider-based integration. So we talked about that tight integration, speaking the domain-specific language of these tools so that you have that idempotency and you don't have to reinvent the wheel sort of in terms of writing different types of code. Rob showed off the Puppet example, but of course, Ansible, DSC, SaltStack, Chef, Octopus Deploy, all of these have provider-based integration with Chocolatey. So they have Chocolatey providers that interface well with the Chocolatey client underneath. Script-based integration, of course. Manfred, we didn't forget about Box Starter. I know you had that comment in the chat. It's there. SCCM, Intune, and other RMM tooling. Of course, script-based integration is a little bit more writing the code on that end, but nice and simple, as you saw in the SCCM example, not very complicated to write. And if you speak a little bit of Chocolatey, the basic Choco install commands, it should be just fine. Then Stephen touched on extensibility with PowerShell, specifically all the different ways you can build this into pipelines and stuff. Tools like Jenkins are very useful for that. Look for that in our QDE, specifically the quick deployment environment. And then also Stephen touched on leveraging repositories. So the different types of repository solutions available out there for you. Any NuGet v2 repositories like JFrog Artifactory, Sonatype Nexus, and Anito ProGet. And I know there was a comment about high availability with Nexus. Those repositories do have paid versions that have high availability built into them. So you can always leverage some of the paid versions of those repositories instead. That's usually what the HA tool, you can kind of make some rudimentary tooling in the open source, but that's beyond the scope of this discussion here. So in addition to that, then Gary touched on the API-based integrations with central management. And this is huge for Chocolatey central management and our usage. So really building stuff into Splunk, into ServiceNow, any of these different tools, as long as you can speak between the APIs, the world's your oyster and it's only limited by your imagination, as Stephen said. So that was, and then we had the open Q&A, those discussions. So thank you so much for submitting all those questions, folks. That was a really good discussion there. So we've included some links here for further reference. I'll talk through some of these to give you a chance to write them down or note them down, and we can throw them into the chat as well if we want to. So firstly, we have documentation on our Chocolatey documentation, the newly designed Chocolatey documentation. Thank you so much for all your hard work on that, Gary and Steph specifically. So the Choco docs are great. The short URL for that integrations page is ch0.co/integration docs. And we also have a integrations playlist. So we have some videos up on YouTube that we've sort of assimilated together, aggregated for you to kind of show off some of the different integrations that we have available. And the playlist for that video is at ch0.co/integration videos. And of course, that last link there that we've had all the way through is our Chocolatey for Business feature. Specifically, if you want to check out package internalizer, package builder, and some of those the other tooling around inside Chocolatey Central Management and that API. So that's all there for you as well. You can check out those links as you like. So big plug here, if you'll allow us for a second. We are big PowerShell fans here at Chocolatey. So we like to plug this event, especially because this is actually where I've met Rob for the first time and where a lot of our team goes. So the PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit 2021 is happening, and the CFP is coming up here. So I'm going to tag Rob for this. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, we are friends of DevOps Collective, and so they have an event coming up in, I think it's the end of April. It is a virtual event. I'll have to check. It's either April or May. It is a virtual event this year. It's usually in person, and so the format's going to be a little different. What I am enjoying as I'm hearing about it is they're going to be doing the lightning demos. So they're keeping that, and they're kind of trying to keep as much of the format and camaraderie as you can get in person in a virtual event. So if you are interested in speaking, we highly recommend it. We have probably 4 or 5 of our folks. They're going to be speaking about all things PowerShelly, or at least putting in their sessions to speak. That call for papers, that's what CFP is, closes on January 15th. So you want to get your sessions submitted now. Thanks, Adil.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. I believe it's around end of April timeframe for PowerShell DevOps Global Summit, as it usually is, I believe. Awesome. So throwing this up as usual, here's a list of what we've been doing so far in terms of schedule and what we've done up to now, and also what's coming soon. So you can go ahead and check out any of these sessions. Big ones that are coming up now, we're on day 9. So of course, day 10, exploring self-service anywhere. Join us on Monday with Paul Broadwith for that. That's going to be a good one. Day 11 is a really good one because a little bit of an Easter egg there. There's a lot of secret things being worked on in the Mad Scientist lab with Stephen and Rob. So we'll see what comes out of that for sure. And day 12, of course, we'll have another Q&A session, and there is a questions link for that as well. So if we didn't get to you today, we'll try and get to you on that last session. So appreciate your questions there, and we're not ignoring you. We'll be back. And with that, I want to sincerely thank you all for your time. We will be throwing a link into the chat for that survey so that you can go ahead and fill out that survey and get the chance to win a prize today. So that's awesome. But with that, I want to sincerely thank you all for your time. Many of you have shown up every day for us and supported us here, and even when we suffered at the hands of the demo gods. So thank you for sticking with us, and I hope you have an enjoyable weekend. And we'll see you again on Monday. Stay safe, and bye for now.